he said, okay, let's look at the Baptist stuff. So we want to know Baptist, where it came from. The topic we touched on was during our reading, we were talking about the founding, actually, the things leading to American founding revolution. There's some, some background in this background was that there was the religious life, those days, especially Christian lives, play a major role in the colony era for American life, right? So I was talking to Noah about something I observed in other occasion, basically the different approach, the denomination of the Baptist. I think some of your family are from that background, Baptists. The Baptist was to my recollection, was a major force that argued at the time for the Constitution, which is embodied in the Constitution, talking about the separation of church and states, and that become a running theme in American life from those days till today, even. So, and today, in recent years, or recent decades, after Second World War especially, the advocacy for Christianity actually said, okay, we want the religion to begin to influence, even ground some state policy affairs, some of the, even appointment of judges, making certain education. I'm not saying good or bad. The point is that the advocacy of Baptists from the time of the founding adamantly insists the separation of the two, that is church and the states, till today, said using the church, the ruling power, whatever, the advocacy measures to influence policy, So it's even influence of political setup for this nation are a little bit reverse, So 180-degree change actually. So in a sense, hope it's not that, but 120 degree. So who knows? It's pretty much a reverse. So with that, Noah was curious about what the Baptist influence, what the Baptist actually already started, and the influence it exerted in the founding era, especially concerning the topic you guys are talking about the Constitution. Naomi, are you with us? Okay, be here. Okay, it seems like in your own mind. So, okay, let's look at in the Wikipedia. There's some reading going on here. We're going to read a little part leading to the founding of the...
could someone send it on text or something?
It's easy. Just look up Baptist and Wikipedia will come up with.
Wikipedia Baptist, yes. Okay. The first part I want to know what to read started from the beginning. So,
all right.
You can study yourself. The topic is what the Baptist influence in the founding era, especially particularly the Constitution, that's the topic I'm interested to get at. But we got to read some raw materials. So the raw material here is one. There must be some other materials, even books. We'll talk about that topic. But first, we want to know general topic is what is Baptist really is about. So, and how it started. So, go ahead, Noah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Baptists form a major branch of evangelical Christianity, distinguished by baptizing professing Christian believers only, believers' baptism, and doing so by complete immersion. Baptist churches also generally subscribe to the doctrines of soul competency, the responsibility and accountability of every person before God, sola fide, salvation by just faith alone, sola scriptura, scripture alone as the rule of faith and practice, and Congregationalist church government. Baptists generally recognize two ordinances, baptism and communion. Diverse from their beginning, those identifying as Baptists today differ widely from one another in what they believe, how they worship, their attitudes towards other Christians, and their understanding of what is important in Christian discipleship. Historians trace the earliest Baptist church to 1609 in Amsterdam, Dutch Republic, with English separatist John Smith as its pastor. In accordance with his reading of the New Testament, he rejected baptism of infants and instituted baptism only of believing adults. Baptist practice spread to England, where the general Baptists considered Christ's atonement to extend to all people, while the particular Baptists believed that it extended only to the elect. Thomas Helwys formulated a distinctively Baptist request that the church and the state be kept separate in matters of law, so that individuals might have freedom of religion.
So that's one of this person, Thomas Helwys, actually argued that separation, right? So,
Yeah. Helwys died in prison as a consequence of the religious conflict with English dissenters under James I. In 1638, Roger Williams established the first Baptist congregation in the North American colonies. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the First and Second Great Awakening increased church membership in the United States. Baptist missionaries have spread their faith to every continent.
Okay, Elijah, can you read the origin there?
Baptist historian Bruce Gurley outlines four main views of Baptist origins. The modern scholarly consensus that the movement traces its origin to the 17th to the 17th century via the English separatists. The view that it was an outgrowth of the Anabaptist movement of believers. Baptism began in 1525 on the European continent. The perpetuity view.
Perpetuity view.
Perpetuity view. Oh my goodness, what in the world?
It's a lot strange word.
No, my phone started going crazy.
Okay.
Which assumes that the Baptist faith and practice has existed since the time of Christ, and the successionist view, or Baptist successionism, which argues that the Baptist churches actually existed in an unbroken chain since the time of Christ.
Wow, okay. Okay.
English separatist view. Modern Baptist churches trace their history to the English separatist movement in the 1600s. A century after the rise of the original Protestant denominations.
That's John Lee's time, Jane Lee's time, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This view of Baptist origins has the most historical support and is most widely accepted. Adherents to this position consider the influence of Anabaptists upon...
Of what? Anabaptists, please. Anabaptist.
Upon early Baptists to the minimal. It was a time of considerable political and religious turmoil. Both individuals.
Okay.
And
we copy your tongue, please.
Individuals and churches were willing to give up their theological roots if they became convinced that more biblical truth had been discovered.
Let me read on instead.
Okay.
I wanted to emphasize my mind as well, so my mind scattered. Okay, so during the Protestant Reformation, the Church of England, Anglicans, separated from the Roman Catholic Church. There were some Christians who were not content with the achievements of the mainstream Protestant Reformation. There were also Christians who were disappointed that the Church of England and now made corrections for what some considered to be errors and abuses. With those most critical of the Church's direction, some chose to stay and try to make constructive changes from within the Anglican Church. They became known as Puritans. So that's Puritans, we mean them, right? And are described by Corley as cousins of the English separatists. Others decided they must leave the church because of their disaffection and became known as the separatists. I believe this is where the Mayflower, the people came from Dutch, So in 1579, Faustus Sancinus, wow, okay, founded the Unitarian in Poland, which was a tolerant country. The Unitarians taught baptism by immersion. When Poland ceased to be tolerant, they fled to Holland. In Holland, the Unitarians introduced immersion baptism to the Dutch Mennonites. Baptist churches have their origins in the movement started by English John Smith and Thomas Helvey in Amsterdam. Due to their shared beliefs with the Puritans and Congregationalists, they went into exile in 1607 for Holland with other believers who held the same biblical positions. They believed that the Bible is to be the only guide and the believer's baptism is what the scriptures require. In 1609, the year considered to be the foundation of the movement, they baptized believers and founded the First Baptist Church. In 1609, while still there, Smith wrote a tract titled The Character of the Beast and the False Constitution of the Church. In it, he expressed two propositions. First, infants are not to be baptized. And second, anti-Christians. Oh, wow, okay. First time I heard that word. Anti-Christian converted are to be admitted into the true church by baptism. Hence, his conviction was that a scriptural church should consist only of regenerated believers who had been baptized on the personal confession of faith. He rejected the separatist movement's doctrine of infant baptism or pseudo-baptism. Shortly thereafter, Smith left the group. Ultimately, Smith became committed to believers' baptism as the only biblical baptism. He was convinced on the basis of his interpretation the scriptures that infants would not be damned should they die in infancy. Smith convinced that his self-baptism was invalid, applied with the Mennonites for membership. He died while waiting for membership, and some of his followers became Mennonites. Thomas Helvey and others kept their Baptist commitments. The modern Baptist denomination is an undergrowth of Smith's movement. Baptists rejected the name Anabaptists when they were called that by opponents in duration. Macbeth writes that as late as the 18th century, many Baptists referred to themselves as the Christians commonly, though falsely, called Anabaptists. Thomas Helvey took over the leadership, leading the church back to England in 1611. And published the First Baptist Confession of Faith, a declaration of faith for English people, in 1611. He founded the first General Baptist Church in Spitalfield. It's a difficult word. Spitalfield. Good, thank you. East England. See, this girl is already tired. Are you yawning?
No, we just kind of.
England in 1612. Okay. Another milestone in the early development of Baptist doctrine was in 1638 with John Spilsbury, a Calvinistic minister who helped to promote the strict practice of believers' baptism by immersion as opposed to effusion or aspersion. According to Tom Needles, professor of historical theology and the South Baptist Theological Seminary, Spilsbury's cognate argument from the gathered, disciplined congregation of believers baptized by immersion as considered the New Testament church give expression to built on insight that has emerged within separatism The Once in the Life of John Smith and the Suffering Congregation of Thomas Harvey, and matured in particular Baptists. Okay, now can you read on here? So.
Anabaptist influence view. A minority view is that early 17th century Baptists were influenced by, but not directly connected to, continental Anabaptists. According to this view, the General Baptists shared similarities with Dutch Waterlander Mennonites, one of many Anabaptist groups, including believers' baptism only, religious liberty, separation of church and state, and Arminian views of salvation, predestination, and original sin. Representative writers, including A.C. Underwood and William R. Estep Gorley, wrote that among some contemporary Baptist scholars who emphasized the faith of the community over soul liberty, the Anabaptist influence theory is making a comeback. However, the relations between Baptist and Anabaptists were early strained. In 1624, the then 5 existing Baptist churches of London issued a condemnation of the Anabaptists. Furthermore, the original group associated with Smith and popularly believed to be the first Baptists broke with the Waterlander Mennonite Anabaptists after a brief period of association in the Netherlands. Perpetuity and succession view.
What the word perpetuity means?
I have no idea.
Perpetual
Yeah.
means continue. Yeah, forever.
Oh,
Perpetual.
just like continue
Continue endlessly until it's not.
until it's not.
I'm joking. So.
Has always been and always will be.
Okay. Yeah.
Traditional Baptist historians write from the perspective that Baptists had existed since
Are
the
you
time
sick?
of Christ.
Maybe sickly?
I mean, we're all
We just
kinda-
have some
Only
allergies.
nose.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not.
Our family's
Yeah, we're
kinda
not sick. We're just.
Okay.
We're just kind of.
Everybody's sneezing. Yeah.
My dad's and mom are like really suffering with like sneezing and stuff right now. My dad could not stop sneezing.
I heard.
Oh, no.
Don't tell me.
Yikes.
I'm joking. So.
Something must be wafted in.
Mm.
Proponents of the Baptist successionist or perpetuity view consider the Baptist movement to have existed independently from Roman Catholicism and prior to the Protestant Reformation. The perpetuity view is often identified with The Trail of Blood, a booklet of 5 lectures by J. M. Carroll published in 1931. Other Baptist writers who advocate the successionist theory of Baptist origins are John T. Christian, Thomas Crosby, G.H. Orchard, J.M. Cramp, William Cathcart, Adam Taylor, and D.B. Wright.
Okay.
This view was also held by English Baptist preacher Charles Spurgeon, as well as Jesse Mercer, the namesake of Mercer University.
Mm.
In 1898, William Whitsitt was pressured to resign his presidency of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary for denying Baptist successionism.
Ah. What? Wow, we could deny successionism. What does that even mean? It's crazy, huh? Okay, we'll read later, so I guess. Basically, it's from the beginning, I guess. Okay,
Well,
great.
perpetuity refers to the faith and principles of Baptist doctrine, while succession was actually talking about like there were actual churches that have existed since the
in
time
the
of
beginning,
Christ.
right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wow, that's crazy. Sorry. So, all kinds of arguments. Go ahead.
Baptist origins in the United Kingdom. In 1612, Thomas Helwys established a Baptist congregation in London consisting of congregants from Smith's Church. A number of other Baptist churches sprang up, and they became known as the General Baptists. The particular Baptists were established when a group of Calvinist separatists adopted believers' baptism. The particular Baptists consisted of 7 churches by 1644 and had created a confession of faith called the First London Confession of Faith. It's no wonder that particular Baptists have Calvinist background, because a big point of Calvinist theology is that the idea of the elect.
Mm-hmm.
Baptist origins in North America. Both Roger Williams and John Clark, his compatriot and co-worker for religious freedom, are variously credited as founding the earliest Baptist church in North America. In 1639, Williams established a Baptist church in Providence, Rhode Island, and Clark began a Baptist church in Newport, Rhode Island. According to a Baptist historian who has researched the matter extensively, there is much debate over the centuries as to whether the Providence or Newport church deserved the place of first Baptist congregation in America.
Okay.
Exact records for both congregations are lacking. Who cares? Just kidding. Just kidding. The Great Awakening energized the Baptist movement, and the Baptist community experienced spectacular growth. Baptists became the largest Christian community in many southern states, including among the enslaved black population.
That's important context, okay? Great Awakening is the time that happened leading to revolution, okay? The time leading to revolution. So this all happened prior to the American Revolution. So
Yep. Baptist missionary work in Canada began in the British colony of Nova Scotia, present-day Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, in the 1760s. The first official record of a Baptist church in Canada was that of the Horton Baptist Church, now Wolfville, in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, on 20.
do you want to live
29th
there?
of October,
No, I don't want to live there. There are a lot of wolves there. So.
Wolfville.
I try to cheer you guys up. So. That's a long time ago, man. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The church was established with the assistance of the New Light evangelist Henry Alline. Many of Alline's followers, after his death, would convert and strengthen the Baptist presence in the Atlantic region. Two major groups of Baptists formed the basis of the churches in the Maritimes.
No, well, I understand why it's attractive because most churches like Anglican, Catholic, they practice, I guess, infant baptism. So therefore, a newborn baby will automatically, every new member will be automatically become a Christian. They when baptized young. Therefore, it was a huge influence over what kind of belief or how educated, if you get the truth, a member would be. Am I? So it's therefore it's also become a tool for the state. In this case, Anglicans have a king. The king in England is head of a church, so the Catholic have a pope. Still in the state power, in a sense, political power, to unchecked to include all the members of the new population. Am I right? You see my point? Then naturally become their branch of a church in a sense. Am I making sense to you guys? So the Baptist movement therefore was very attractive and it therefore were disturbing in the early days because Baptists required a believer's confession. They had to be baptized as one, in a sense, adult knows that they believe Christ by their own will, what is a vocation with the word, so there is also a great challenge affront to the kind of practice those days that generally in European nations on the Catholic rule, and then in England on the monarchy, which in the state religion called Anglican Church, right? They're all combined together, state and church not separated in a sense. Therefore, Baptists were revolutionary in the beginning, so we need to separate the two affairs together. So they want some legitimate and more pure spiritual leadership to lead them as a God's congregation. So it's not necessarily a bad movement in the beginning. So,
Very quickly.
And I'm making sense to you. So
Yeah,
so try to
absolutely.
cast some background there. Go ahead. Yeah.
Very quickly, my mom is actually waiting for us to answer about lunch.
Yeah.
So do you want something from Wendy's just to quickly get that out of the way?
Yeah. I would like a chicken sandwich
Okay.
with a Coke. She's bring food to us, huh? Okay.
Yes, she is. Sorry for the interruption.
No, it's okay. So, we don't need to get into the detail. We got the most important one out, right? So let's move fast forward. I want to know where the founding, the congregation time. There's a lot of general slavery crisis.
Yeah, they have everything here in the United States where
Lots
you're
of
at.
stuff, huh? Okay, don't have much there, so okay, let's do a research online on your browser. Baptist and the Constitution.
And Constitution.
Mm-hmm. Constitution.
Southern Baptist Convention.
Not their constitution, but our United States Constitution. Yeah. Let's type United States Constitution. Yeah. United States. Wow, they have their own constitution. Can you believe that? So, okay.
No surprise there.
Okay.
Which link did you go to?
I don't know yet. So what do you
I think I found a good one.
Okay, tell me. Oh, there you go.
It's called Baptists and the American Constitution.
Yeah, there's next one, separation of church state in the United States. Wikipedia, actually. Let's do this one, okay?
Yeah, that's the one I'm
Yeah,
on, but we can do
okay.
the other one too.
No, I like this. This seems more thorough. Okay, we still have 20 minutes. We can read this article,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Allow me to read. Started.
That's
Let me send to you.
yeah.
Okay, you already sent. You already sent it, right?
Oh, but I didn't get it.
Okay, Elijah and Naomi. So this is not necessarily interesting topic, huh?
I think it's.
Oh, it is.
It's very interesting.
I have it above my nose. Real quick.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, we all kind of have a little.
Oh, I think you guys might suffer a little bit cold or whatever. So
I think it's more allergies.
allergies. Okay.
Cold actually makes
Oh,
you feel
maybe
like
you kind of
sick.
grasp.
We
you know,
don't feel
stuff
bad. It's just sneezing.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to let Naomi take her time, but I'm going to read on.
Yeah, go
okay,
ahead.
so, okay. Baptists and the American Constitution. At the close of war, a Congress of representatives from the states were called the draft Constitution for the United States. The new Constitution was submitted for ratification by the 100 states September 17 to 1787. There was much opposition to the proposed constitution, especially as it determined that there should be no religious tests. For a long time, it seemed doubtful if the constitution would be ratified. The issue hung upon the action of two states, Massachusetts and Virginia. Each of these states, the Baptists held the balance of power. There were two currents of thought against the article on religion, and one found it excessive and dangerous. The other insufficient and maimed. It was feared that by some of the opponents of the article that the power might pass into the hands of the Roman Catholics, the Jews, or the infidels, even the Pope of Rome. One horrified delegate exclaimed, "Might become president of the United States." The opposition was particularly strong in Massachusetts, where the liberal ideas were combated by the legislature. Other states were unable to find in the article a sufficiently wide certain guarantee of religious liberty, and therefore they proposed amendments. Okay, Naomi, on the paragraph started with January the 9th, okay, January the 9th, 1788. A convention of delegates assembled in Boston, Massachusetts from all parts of the states. The debate was long, At the ensuing uncertainty, some of the Baptists looked upon the Constitution with suspicion as not giving full guarantee of freedom. James Manning, president of Rhode Island College, was an earnest advocate of the adoption of the Constitution and had much influence in the body. He fully believed that on the adoption of that measure, the future well-being of the country was suspended. Being aware that several Baptist ministers were members of the convention and that they generally looked upon the proposed constitution with a jealous eye, he went to Boston with the view to exert whatever influence he could to disarm his brethren of their prejudices and to bring them to act as he fully believed the interests of the nation required. In this effort, he was seconded by his intimate friend, Dr. Samuel Stillman, who was himself a member of the body, with 2 or 3 other were influential ministers. The question for ratification was finally carried by a majority of 19, just before the final vote. Governor Hancock, the president of the convention, called upon Dr. Manning to pray, and though the request took him by surprise, he fell upon his knees and offered prayer in which patriotism and piety were most delightfully blended, and which left an extraordinary impression upon the whole assembly. On his return to Providence after the convention had closed the sessions, he met his friends with the warmest congratulations and could scarcely find language strong enough to express his sense of the importance of the result which has been reached. The opposition to the Constitution in Virginia was led by strong popular men. The people were about equally divided on the measure. The convention met in Richmond in June 1788. The Baptists in Williams Meeting House, Coachland County, March 7th, and canvassed the Constitution and reached the following conclusion: whether the new federal Constitution, which has now lately made its appearance in public, made sufficient provision for the secure enjoyment of religious liberty, on which it was agreed unanimously that, in the opinion of the general committee, it did not sample. The leader in favor of the Constitution was James Madison, and opposed to it was Patrick Henry. Madison being absent in Philadelphia, and the candidate for Orange County was John Leland, who was a great Baptist county, and the probabilities that Leland would be elected. Madison called on Leland to spend half a day with him. Leland came down from the race and supported Madison. He believed Madison would properly represent the cause. The celebrated lawyer G.S. Barber, in a eulogy upon Madison, said that the creator adopting the Constitution of the United States probably belonged to the Baptist clergyman, formerly of Virginia, by the name of Leland, and reached his conclusion in this way. He said that if Madison had not been in the Virginia Convention, the Constitution would not have been ratified by that state. That as approval from 9 states were required to give effect to this instrument, and that Virginia was the 9th state. If it has been rejected by her, the Constitution would have failed, and that it was by Elder Leland's influence that Madison was elected to the convention. Governor Brace of Massachusetts was a great friend of Leland, gives the following account of the affair. Soon after the convention which framed the Constitution of the United States had finished their work and submitted to the people for their action, 2 strong and active parties were formed in the state of Virginia on the subject of its adoption. The state was nearly equally divided. One party was opposed to its adoption unless certain amendments which they maintained that as the safety of the people required should be incorporated into it before it was ratified by them. And the head of this great party stood Patrick Henry, the orator of the Revolution, and one of Virginia's favorite sons. The other party agreed with their opponents as to the character and necessity of the amendments proposed, but they contended that the people should have the power and could as well incorporate these amendments into the Constitution after its adoption as before. And it was a great crisis in the affairs of the country. And if the Constitution then presented to the people by the Convention should be rejected by them, Such would be the state of the public mind, and there was little or no reason to believe that another would be agreed upon by the future convention, and in such event, so much to be dreaded, the hopes of constitutional liberty and the confederated and free republic would be lost. At the head of this party stood James Madison. The strength of the two parties were to be tested by the election of a county delegates to the state convention. That convention would have to adopt or reject the Constitution. Mr. Madison was named as a candidate in favor of its adoption for the county of Orange. Wow, that's a lengthy talk. Okay, we're going to bypass that. Okay, so the details. No, I can read on there. What is? Let's see. Man, this is all the details. Okay. I want to just jump ahead to called as late as the beginning of the 19th century.
As late as the beginning of the 19th century, there was a dream of a state church. Thomas Jefferson, writing to Benjamin Rush, says, "The successful experiment made under the prevalence of that delusion of a state church on the clause of the Constitution, which, while it secures the freedom of the press, covered also the freedom of religion, had given to the clergy a very favorable hope of obtaining an establishment of a particular form of Christianity through the United States. And as every met believes its own form, the true one, every one perhaps hoped for his own. But especially the Episcopalians and the Congregationalists.
Episcopalians is the branch of Anglicans, okay, so...
The returning good sense of our country threatens abortion to their hopes, and they believe that any portion of power confided to me will be exerted in opposition to their schemes. And they believe rightly, for I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the minds of men." Massachusetts did not ratify the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. The suggested amendment came from the Baptists. Denominationally, says Cathcart, no community asked for this change in the Constitution but the Baptists.
Here is highlighted, am I? Only the ones also separation of states and religion.
Yeah, they were instrumental in that, apparently, yeah. The Quakers probably would have petitioned it if they had thought of it, but they did not. John Adams and the Congregationalists did not desire it. The Episcopalians did not wish it. It went too far for most Presbyterians in revolutionary times, or in our days, when we hear so much about putting the divine name in the Constitution. The Baptists asked it through Washington. The request commended itself to his judgment and to the generous soul of Madison, and to the Baptists, beyond a doubt, belongs the glory of engrafting its best articles on the noblest Constitution ever framed for the government of mankind. On account of his well-known views, there was much opposition to Madison in Virginia. Through the influence of Patrick Henry, he was defeated for the United States Senate. The congressional districts were so gerrymandered that it was thought he could not be elected to the House of Representatives. Here again, the Baptists, believing in his integrity, threw their influence to him, and he was elected to Congress. On the general subject of amendments to the Constitution, Madison, in a speech delivered June 8, 1789, said, "I will state my reasons."
I just found this interesting. I never linked James Madison to Baptist at all, so this morning we're talking the two topics we want to discuss, James Madison and Baptist, so they all come together here, so.
Interesting.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah, I figured you did, but that's...
No, nothing. I was just thinking about related to Constitution, Baptist we talk a little bit, but the Constitution...
Well, both do have, I guess, a central point, because Madison is connected to the Constitution, and then you're wanting to look at how the Baptists connect to the Constitution.
Exactly. But James Madison was instrumental of the Baptists. So that's crazy thinking.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know anything about that, so go ahead.
I will state my reasons why I think it proper to propose amendments, and state the amendments themselves so far as I think they ought to be proposed. If I thought I could fulfill the duty I owe to myself and my constituents to let the subjects pass over in silence, I would most certainly not trespass on the indulgence of the House. But I cannot do this, and am therefore compelled to beg a patient hearing to what I have to lay before you. It appears to me that this House is bound by every motive of prudence not to let the first session pass over without proposing to the state legislature some things to be incorporated into the Constitution that will render it acceptable to the whole people of the United States, as it has been found acceptable to a majority of them. I wish, among other reasons, why something should be done, that those who have been friendly to the adoption of the Constitution may have the opportunity of proving to those who were opposed to it that they were as sincerely devoted to liberty and a republican government as those who charged them with wishing the adoption of this Constitution in order to lay the foundation of an aristocracy or despotism.
Wow.
It will be a desirable thing to extinguish from the bosom of every member of the community any apprehensions that there are those among his countrymen who wish to deprive them of the liberty for which they valiantly fought and honorably bled. And if there are amendments desired of such a nature as it will not injure the Constitution, and they can be engrafted so as to give satisfaction to the doubting part of our fellow citizens, the friends of the federal government will evince the spirit of deference and concession for which they have hitherto distinguished. It cannot be a secret to the gentlemen of this House that notwithstanding the ratification of the system of government by 11 of the 13 United States, in some cases unanimously, and others by large majorities, yet still there is a great number of our constituents who are dissatisfied with it, among whom are many respectable for their talents and patriotism, and respectable for the jealousy they have for their liberty, which, though mistaken in its object, is laudable in its motive. There is a great body of the people falling under this description, who at present feel much inclined to join their support to the cause of federalism, if they were satisfied on this point. But perhaps there is a stronger motive than this for one going into a consideration of the subject. It is to provide those securities for liberty which are required by a part of the community. I allude in a particular manner to those two states, Rhode Island and North Carolina, that have not thought fit to throw themselves into the bosom of the Confederacy. It is a desirable thing on our part as well as theirs that a reunion should take place as soon as possible, but I will candidly acknowledge that, over and above all of these considerations, I do conceive that the Constitution may be amended. That is to say, if all powers of the general government may be guarded against in a more secure manner than it is now done, while no one advantage arising from the exercise of that power shall be damaged or endangered by it. We have in this way something to gain, and if we proceed with caution, nothing to lose. Upon the advice of Madison, the subject was presented to Washington. The petition was prepared by John Leland and is as follows.
Let's bypass that. That's a long read. So try to finish it before your notes here. Washington made the following reply. Read there. So.
Okay. To the General Committee representing the United Baptist Churches in Virginia. Gentlemen, I request that you will accept my best acknowledgments for your congratulations on my appointment to the first office of the nation. The kind manner in which you mention my past conduct equally claims the expression of my gratitude. After we had, by the smiles of divine providence on our exertions, obtained the object for which we contended, I retired at the conclusion of the war, with the idea that my country could have no further occasion for my services, and with the intention of never again entering public life. But when the exigencies.
Sorry.
An urgent need. Exigencies of my country seemed to require me once more to engage in public affairs. My honest conviction of duty superseded my former resolution, and became my apology for deviating from the happy plan which I had adopted. I could have entertained the slightest apprehension that the Constitution framed by the convention where I had the honor to preside might possibly endanger the religious rights of any ecclesiastical society. Certainly, I would never have placed my signature to it. And if I could now conceive that the general government might be so administered as to render the liberty of conscience insecure, I beg you that none will be persuaded, that none will be more zealous than myself to establish effective barriers against the horrors of spiritual tyranny and every species of religious persecution. For you doubtless remember, I have often expressed my sentiments that any man conducting himself as a good citizen and being accountable to God alone for his religious opinions ought to be protected in worshiping the deity according to the dictates of his own, I guess,
own
conscience.
Own conscience.
Open conscience.
Pretty much burn up. Yeah.
While I recollect with satisfaction that the religious society of which you are members throughout America uniformly and almost unanimously were firm friends of civil liberty and the persevering promoters of our glorious revolution, I cannot hesitate to believe that they will be the faithful supporters of a free, yet efficient, general government. Under this pleasing expectation, I rejoice to assure them that they may rely upon my best wishes and endeavors to promote their prosperity.
Okay. There's a lot of print errors.
In the meantime, be assured, gentlemen, that I entertain a proper sense of your fervent supplications to God for my temporal and eternal happiness. I am, gentlemen, your most obedient servant.
And gentlemen, your obedient servant.
George Washington.
Yeah. You must speak English. Let me read on here. Are we almost there? Okay. One of the first things Madison proposed on entering Congress, June 8th, 1789, was the following amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and the petition of the government for the redress of grievances. The Baptists failed to secure under this new provision of the Constitution. Long afterwards, March the 2nd, 1819, Madison wrote to Robert Walsh from Montpelier as follows. It was the universal opinion at a century preceding the last that a civil government could not stand without the prop of religious establishment, and that the Christian religion itself would perish if not supported by legal provision for the clergy. The experience of Virginia conspicuously corroborates the disapprove of both opinions. The civil government, though bereft of everything like a society hierarchy, possesses requisite stability and performs its functions with a complete success, while as the number, the industry, and the morality of the priesthood and the devotion of the people are being manifestly increased by the total separation of the church from the state. The force which work for liberty has thus been summed up by Bacon in the establishment of the American principles of the non-interference of the state with religion and the equality of all religious communities before the law. Much was due, no doubt, to the mutual jealousies of the sects, and one or two of which were strong enough to maintain exceptional pretensions over the rest combined. Much also is to be imputed to the indifferentism and sometimes the anti-religious sentiment of important numerous class doctrinaire politicians, of which Jefferson may be taken as a type. So far as this work was a work of intelligent conviction and religious faith, the chief honor for it must be given to the Baptists. Other sects, notably the Presbyterians, have been energetic and efficient in demanding their own liberties. The Friends Baptists agreed on demanding liberty for conscience and worship, and equality before the law, and for all alike. But the active labor in this cause was merely done by the Baptists. It is to their consistency and constancy in the warfare against the privileges of the powerful standing order of New England and the moribund establishments in the South that we are chiefly indebted for the final triumph in this country of that principle of the separation of the church and the state, which is one of the large contributions of the New World to civilization and the Church Universal. Bacon, A History of American Christianity. Ralph Finney has summed up the provisions of this amendment in the following discriminating manner. By this, United States solemnly promised They would never elevate any one form of belief to the rank of the official religion as a confederation, but that, on the contrary, equal liberty would be conceded to all the churches. It was therefore the most absolute separation of the two powers, which the United States, at the moment of constituting themselves into a republic, placed on the basis of their relations with the churches, and to that separation they entrusted the guarantee of the fullest religious liberty. There is, however, one thing that must be equally noted. The Constitution of the United States did not abolish the union between the state and the church within those particular states in which the separation had not already taken place. Now, no separation had been effected, nor was it realized for a whole century in the New England states. Again, the Constitution did not guarantee full religious liberty except in federal relationships, and it did not remove those restrictions in the internal relations of a single state. Some of them, the states, however, still remained intolerant in spite of and of the federal constitution. Raffini. There's a lot of books to read if you want to. I hope not. You can become bookworm if you read all that.
Bookworm?
Yeah. A worm book.
Glasses.
A worm book. Okay, I finished now, so. But it's sneezing very hard. What's going on?
There's